Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about photography because I feel like this is helpful for people to know because it's just things that I've kind of learned. So one of the biggest things I learned, and I know it goes against what everybody says, that the gear does not make your photography, but in my case, it really did. And it's not necessarily saying that like I couldn't take photographs with other gear. It's more that it wasn't until I got the gear that I really wanted and needed that my photography took off. It wasn't until I got a full frame camera body that I noticed a drastic improvement in my photography. And I think a lot of it comes to personal preference because you may have some people who are perfectly fine with basic beginner cameras and can get great shots that they personally like. For me, I personally like the more like blurred background and very like Pinteresty looking kind of photos. I'm not as much into nature photography, which if you are, you can do that easily with just about any camera. So I started out when I started with DSLR cameras, because I had a lot of cameras growing up. When I started DSLR cameras, I got a Nikon D53, I think is what it was. Because I was starting out, I just wanted one. I didn't know anything about them, but I knew that Nikon was cheaper. And I had like no budget. I was in grad school. So I bought a used one off eBay and I took it out, did lots of photos. I had a very basic lens. I think it had the kit lens on it too. And I think over time I got different lenses. So at one point, I still wasn't really happy with it. I upgraded to the D7100, which was a much more advanced camera, still not full frame. And I even got this super, super expensive Sigma lens to do like astrophotography and stuff. And I will say that lens was phenomenal for like portraits and all that stuff. The thing is, that lens with that camera was so heavy. It was even heavier than this, which is a pretty heavy setup. That lens still stuck out about this much longer. And it just like, it was ridiculous. Like I didn't like it. And I still didn't like how the pictures came out. And here's part of the reason. Each photography brand has their own color science to how pictures show up. So Nikon photos look very different from Canon photos, which also look very different from Sony photos, which look very different from Fujifilm photos. So that's part of the difference too. I hated the color of how the Nikon photos looked, and it felt like I was never happy with how they looked in camera. I always felt like they kind of looked a little washed out and very yellow, and then like kind of almost hazy. No matter what lens, anything I used, they just didn't look sharp enough to me, and like just the colors were just kind of eh. So then I still kept the Nikon stuff. I saw someone on Instagram, I think it was like Carly Kloss, had an Olympus camera. And it was, well, this is a newer model because I had an accident with mine. It was this one. And I loved how cool and vintage this little camera looked, and still was like, it's great for travel. It's, you know, all that. It doesn't have a lens on it right now, but loved it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get one of those. And it was still a pretty expensive little camera. And I had the kit lens, and I actually at the time I bought a little pancake flat prime lens for it because I knew that I needed that for my photos to look better. So I got this one, which actually is a Panasonic lens, but you can use both on Olympus. And this is the 20mm, but it's got 1.7, which the only thing about micro four thirds is you have to double that to get what it actually would be on a full frame camera, which is why the pictures still don't look quite like they would on a full frame camera because of the sensor size. But I was so happy with this and how these were turning out. My photography instantly took off because not only was I happier with the photo quality and the color science that Olympus has, which I love how their photos look, but also the portability and ease of this camera allowed me to carry it in my purse everywhere. And I literally would take this camera everywhere, and that alone made me practice more, made me try harder to not use my cell phone, which back then cell phone cameras were still pretty bad anyway. But like that really improved my photography. So then like over the next few years, I got like a couple more. I think this was the next lens I got, another Panasonic, because usually the Panasonic ones are a little cheaper than the Olympus ones, but they still work great. And this is a 42.5, which means in full frame terms, it's close to a 90mm, I guess, because you double it. But either way, again, stunning for portraits and everything. But I still was like, I think it was a while before I upgraded. I got one of the ones I'm selling, I got the EPL9, and I bought it new too, but like right after I got it, I realized I liked this one better. I just liked using this one better. It has more knobs, so it's more of an advanced camera. The EPL9 is a little bit more of a beginner camera. It's also known as like the vlogger, YouTuber kind of camera because of just how it's made and like the influencer camera. And I just needed something with a little more, which is why I have this one. And then right as I was about to leave for England, I don't know. Either way, at some point, the other one got destroyed by a can of Coke, so I upgraded to this one, which is the same, just a newer model, and I took this to England with me. I think that was also the same year that I traded all my Nikon gear and bought at the camera store. I traded it all in, and I had some expensive stuff too, which was really frustrating. And then I got a brand new but more basic Canon camera. It was a T7i, which was fine, and it was more just to see if I liked it. And then I got like the 50mm lens with it, and they did talk me into an L lens that I didn't like. It was a zoom lens. I'm just not a zoom lens person. And then on top of that, I also got, what did I get with it? Oh, I got like a 24 lens, which was fantastic because the T7i is a crop sensor. So the 24 made it more like, it made it a little wider because the 50 is so tight on a crop sensor because it's cropped, so it's not really 50. I don't know how to explain it because I don't know exactly what the multiplication factor is on the Canon. I only know that Olympus you double. But either way, I noticed instantly using that camera that I liked the colors of the Canon. But the camera itself was still very beginner, very basic. It didn't have enough knobs. It didn't have enough like controls for me, who was getting more comfortable with manual, thanks to Emily, who when we were in London and using the same camera showed me tricks of how to really use manual with this camera. And ever since then, it's like, wow, I love using manual. I don't want to go back. I love it. And I never thought I'd get there. But yeah, so then I bought, when I came back from England, I think it was within 2020 that I bought the EM5 Mark II, which is the other one I'm selling, because I just don't use it much anymore. I wanted that to be my big professional kind of one, because I felt like when I showed up to photo shoots with this, like people were like, that's your camera. So I bought that one, and I bought it with this is a different camera, but I bought it with this professional level lens, which is a zoom lens, but it is a really good one. It's the 12 to 40, but so it's basically like a 24 to 80, and like the range, but I still just felt like I wasn't quite getting what I wanted out of that. So this is like 2020 and 2021 were like the year of me just experimenting with things, mostly 2020. Then at the end of 2020, I decided to get the Pen F because I loved how it looked. It's like this vintage little looking camera that I gotta find. Oh gosh, that chain is loud. Looks very similar to my EM10, but it's a much more advanced. It's a very advanced little like retro looking camera. So I don't know if it'll focus on the camera. Come on, there you go. So it's a very pretty little camera, but it has a full flippy screen, which is fantastic. It's just a very sharp little camera, and it has this cool black and white mode that the black and white photos on this look phenomenal. I can't replicate them in editing. I don't know what it is that they do with that, but it looks great. So anyway, so I don't use this one much anymore, but this is like a sentimental thing that I will not get rid of. The other two, I'm coming to terms with I need to sell them because I don't use them, and they're literally just collecting dust, and there's no point for that when someone else can enjoy them. This one I won't sell either because as much as I don't use it as much, it is like probably the thinnest camera. That's a nice camera that I own, and I can take it for traveling and things. And it's just really cute and vintage. Anyway, this is a really longer video than I thought it was going to be. But then 2021, I decided to take the plunge and trade in my camera, my Canon gear. And then I didn't end up buying stuff at the camera store because I didn't trade the 50, but I traded in all of the stuff like the T7i, the 24 lens, and what was that lens I had? It was like a 14, I don't even know what it was. It was a zoom L lens that I didn't like. Thankfully that thing retained its value, so that's where I got most of my money back because the T7i did not. But I ended up trading all that in, just getting a check from them for that money. And then I found this, which is the 5D Mark IV, which is what I really wanted because I knew a lot of people used it and really had good results with it. I found it on eBay. Some guy was just selling it that he just had upgraded. He barely used it. It had such a low shutter count, and it still looks great. Like there's no dings and scratches on it. It's phenomenal. And so I got it for very inexpensive, used. I mean, still expensive because it's a full frame camera, but for the actual price of a Canon 5D Mark IV, this was very inexpensive. And then shortly after that, I just went ahead and bought myself the 85mm lens because I knew that the 50 I had was kind of It's just the 51.8. It's not the best. It's their literally Canon's cheapest lens. EF lens. So that's why I got, trying to pull it out of here. So I have the 85, which is probably what I use the most anymore because it just gives such good portraits. It's just you have to get really far away. So that's why eventually I did go in and buy this 35 Sigma, which the Sigma lenses are known for having autofocusing issues, and I definitely noticed that with this lens. That's the only thing, but it does create really sharp images when it focuses well. And I got it on sale and for a decent price because it was missing the lens cap, so they just sold me one of their lens caps, which that has been a pain because it falls off all the time. But again, got a good deal on it. This is what I've started using since like March of last year, March I think is when I got this, maybe April. My photography has gone from like here to since I got this. It does help that Brad lets me take photos with like him because like that has allowed me to kind of showcase what I can do even if it's just on a tripod. But still, just the quality of the photos from a full frame camera has made such a difference in my photography. Such a difference. And when I took this to help shoot the wedding with Sarah, like all those things, like the colors that this gets, I barely have to edit photos. They look that good out of camera. So I love that. And then shortly after that, I don't know why, I decided I wanted to get the higher end Olympus, not the 1XD, I'm never gonna get that, but this is the EM1 Mark II, which I'd heard great things about. And I will say it is because it's newer, it's much faster processing and much faster shutter and all that than the other Olympus cameras that I have. It's much quicker, which is good. So this is an okay backup camera. I also got the 75mm prime lens for Olympus, which means it's doubled. So it's a very long lens too. And that's good. I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm starting to do more serious photography and actually make money with my photography, which is fantastic because I've wanted that for years. This is literally what made that happen. I know that's not normally the case, but this is what made it happen, is this camera. And so now I'm looking to sell some cameras and make more money on photo shoots to hopefully buy a second body Canon full frame camera. I think I'm gonna go with the RP, which I know is the entry-level mirrorless full frame, but it's just for being a backup and a travel camera so that I can like have that as a backup if I end up doing weddings and like say Abby's my second shooter. I need a camera for her to use. The Olympus is not gonna give consistent results with this. So that's why I need that. Also just have a backup camera in case something happens with this. But so I need that, and that's what I'm saving up for now because that's gone down a lot in price since it's older now and they've got a lot more newer models. But I think it'll still work perfectly for me for being a backup camera as well as a smaller travel camera. I'm still gonna need the adapter to adapt my lenses, which this lens may be a pain, so I may not even use that on there, I don't know. But I'm not planning on buying the R lenses right now. I'm just gonna use what I've got. That's my plan, but I really, in my personal case, the gear has helped me. And maybe it's just that it created more confidence in my photography because as I saw the photos coming out how I wanted them to, I got more confident in how I go with taking photos and things. I think the autofocus too is much better in this. This thing is also like a tank. Like I carry this in my purse, which this is heavy. Also why I want the RP, because then if I'm just going to hang out with people and I still want to take a camera with me, I can take a camera that I know will perform really well, but also I don't have to have this in my purse, which is heavy. Because right now, if I want to take a smaller camera, I'll take like the Pen F, or I'll take even this with like the other lenses on it, because this is very light compared to this, but it's still big and heavy. So like mirrorless and then the DSLR, it is a difference, but you know. So, but I still like, the thing is, like, this still gives great photos. It's just for some reason I've gotten so used to the Canon ones that now I just really want to have the Canon mirrorless to go with it as my backup. So that's what I'm trying to do. That is, I thought this video was gonna be like 5 minutes. I am so sorry. This is a lot longer.